We are living weird times with pandemics and lockdown measurements. We need solutions to be able to play and record electric guitar at home or at the bedroom. If you're looking for a valve or tube amp for this purpose, it's very likely that someone already recommended you the Fender Blues Junior. And don't get me wrong, the Blues Junior is a great amp. I own the lacquer tweed version myself and I love the sound of it. I just think there are options better suited for this specific application. And today we're gonna talk about one of them, which is the Peavey Classic 20 Mini Head. So I'm gonna open, playing the amp through some backing tracks, using the clean channel with pedals for drives and effects. Then I'm gonna run through the specs and features of the amp and show you more sound samples with the reverb, the drive channel, and the power scaling feature. Finally, we move on to the review part, where I'm gonna tell you where I think this amp kind of kicks the Blues Junior ass and in which points I think the Blues Junior actually has the advantage. So without further ado, let's go. The Peavey Classic 20 Mini Head is an all-valve amp. It's got 3 12AX7s in the preamp and 2 EL84s in the power amp. It outputs around 20 watts, but it's got an inbuilt attenuator, so you can bring that down to 5 watts or to 1 watt, or even defeat the speaker completely. So this makes this amp extremely useful at the bedroom, at the studio, or at the live gig situation. The first channel is a non-master volume clean channel, and in my opinion is the biggest selling point of this amp. It sounds just gorgeous, very clear, warm and vintage. It's excellent for blues, for classic rock and also country and jazz players. It also takes pedal extremely well, so if you like placing your drives, distortion and fuzzes in front of a clean amp, this is a great option. And finally, you can also bring the power down and crank the volume to get some tube saturation going. The second channel is then the drive channel. It's got a separate gain and volume controls, and it goes from an early breakup, something maybe like Malcolm Young, AC/DC, all the way to some 80s hard rock and heavy metal sounds that you wouldn't expect from a classy looking amp like this. Then you get the 3-band EQ, which is shared for both channels, and finally the reverb, which is a digital emulation of a spring reverb. There's quite a lot going on at the rear panel of this amp, starting by the power selection between 1, 5 and 20 watts. Then we have the speaker connector, and we can pick the impedance between 8 or 16 ohm depending on the cabinet. Then we have the headphone connector, and here we can also choose to defeat the speaker. So if you want to play the amp 3 a.m. in the morning, fully cranked, you can do that via headphones. Then we have 2 connections using their mic simulated direct interface, which is their sort of cabinet simulation technology. And you have XLR and a USB connection that you can plug straight into your PC and record. But to be honest, it kind of sucks. I mean, it's a cabinet simulation, but it's 5 years old, and cabinet simulation improved quite a lot in this time, and you cannot compare it with modern impulse responses that are readily available nowadays. Then we have a ground lift, the effects loop for your delays and reverbs. And finally, we have two connections for the foot switches. The first one controls the channel switching and the boost function, and the second one turns on and off the reverb and the effects loop. Let's hear some more sound samples now. I'm gonna play the amp through my Harley Benton G112 cabinet loaded with a Celestion Vintage 30 speaker. I'm gonna close mic the cabinet with a dynamic mic and place an omnidirectional condenser microphone to capture the room. So let me know your thoughts on the sounds and on the looks of this amp. Make sure to write in the comment section below. I think this is a great sounding and classy looking little amp. To me, Peavey really nailed the clean channel. This is where I stay for 90% of the time. I like to set it around 4 so that even with humbucking pickups it's still clean. and then I use boost or drive pedals to sort of push it over the edge and create my crunchy and my lead tones. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the reverb. I think it sounds great, but it's kind of bright and the trails are very long, so it always sounds very exaggerated. It works for some specific styles like surf rock, where you really need this exaggerated reverb, but very often I find myself turning the reverb off because it tends to get in the way of the main dry guitar sound. The drive channel is also quite decent. Like I said, it's not my favorite, but it's quite usable. And if you need to do a gig just using the amp, it's totally doable. I found it interesting, the amount of gain that Peavey puts in this drive channel. It's probably way more gain than most people buying this amp would ever need. But this also makes the amp super versatile. If you want to reduce the gain, you can also swap the preamp tubes to reduce the gain of the dirty channel without affecting the clean channel. Finally, I really like the EQ section. I feel it's powerful enough for you to shape your tone, but not over powerful so that it's actually difficult to dial in a decent sound. The Peavey Classic 20 goes for around 450 euros here in Europe, so it's around 180, 190 euros cheaper than the Fender Blues Junior. I'm not gonna talk about sounds because that's highly subjective, but I think in terms of features, I have to give the edge to the Peavey Classic 20. Starting with the power scaling, I think this makes the amp way more useful in every situation. So at the bedroom, I play it at 1 watt all the time. Whenever I'm in the studio recording, I tend to use the 5 watt mode. And whenever I play with a drummer or with a band, then I put a 20 watt mode and there's always enough juice there. The Blues Junior, on the other hand, I tend to struggle a lot with the master volume. So at the bedroom, I put the master volume at 1 and nothing comes out. At 2 and it's sort of starting to go there, but then 2.5 or 3, the amp is already blowing steam and the windows are crackling. So it's very difficult to adjust the volume. And whenever you get to the band practice, you put the volume at, 5 or 6, and you realize it doesn't get much louder than that because it's a 15 watter. It doesn't really have tons of headroom available. The Peavey also has the headphone option, which is not available in the Blues Junior, and I wouldn't say that it sounds awesome, but it's definitely an extra feature and it's worth it if you want to practice at night without disturbing other people. I also think the Peavey is a much more versatile amp because it's got a second drive channel and an effects loop. But again, that depends on the player. For example, I don't use those features. At this point, you may argue that the Blues Junior is also a combo, so it has its own speaker cabinet, and the version 4 comes with the quite nice Celestion A-type speaker in it. So if you like combos, that's a plus for you. It's also very portable, which is actually one of the main selling points of the Blues Junior. But then, if you're looking for a bedroom amp, does it really need to be portable? I feel that's more of an important feature for a gigging amp. Anyway, in terms of speaker connectivity, the Blues Junior doesn't have an external speaker jack. You can actually disconnect the internal speaker to plug it into a 2x12 or a 4x12. But the jack is hidden inside of the chassis, so it's quite clumsy to find it, and also the cable is very short. On the other hand, the Peavey is made to be connected to any cabinet that you like. The matching 112, loaded with Celestion Vintage 30, goes for around 250 euros, and the matching 2x12 for around 430 euros. So these are quite reasonably priced as well, but if you're on a budget, you can also go for the Harley Benton G112 Vintage, which is also loaded with a Celestion Vintage 30, and this one goes for 135 euros. So you can actually get the Peavey and the Harley Benton cabinet, and you still be below the price of the Fender Blues Junior. So that was it for today. If this review was helpful to you, please make sure to give it a big like, and if you want to see more guitar and gear related content, make sure to hit the subscribe button to stay tuned. If you want to support the channel, I always leave affiliate links in the video description below. If you click on them and buy something, I get a small commission that really helps me to get more products for making reviews at no additional cost for you. And finally, make sure to check the Bedroom Rocker on Patreon for downloadable backing tracks and presets. Keep on rocking and cheers!